Hello. I was wondering if I might trouble you for a cup of strong black coffee, and in the process engage you with an anecdote of no small amusement.
Hello, Herd, and welcome to another episode of the NerdyVerse
Yeah,
series.
I was about to say, is he gonna
There's
remember?
so much nerd happening. I can't tell if we're herding or we're versing. Either way, we're nerding. And you're always welcome to the party and the madness, where we talk about either Star Wars or, in this case, not Star Wars, because
Ah,
NerdyVerse is all
yes.
about all the other things we love. Although clearly, just like every pair of parents, we have a favorite. So, you know, we're built and established on Star Wars, but we love a great many things.
Oh, yes.
I think this is going to be maybe one of the more out there things. I mean, we've mentioned quite a bit, but I mean, we've never really covered far and away from sci-fi, horror, action. But I mean, this is a genre all of its own accord. I mean, it's very unique.
Yes. Yes, indeed. It's a form of cinema that I'm not overly aware of.
Well,
I've
you're
seen.
aware of it. You're
Well, I'm
not.
aware of it. I'm not familiar with
Yeah,
it.
that's a word.
Like I've seen all of three Godzilla films. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Not including the what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Like I've seen the original and the dubbed version. I
Mm-hmm.
count those as one.
They're not, but
They're
I,
not.
I understand. I understand what you mean.
I've seen Godzilla versus Mothra, and
Mm-hmm.
I've seen Godzilla Final Wars.
Yeah. And you've seen the 1998 Matthew Broderick film.
Yes, I have, but I don't consider that a Godzilla film.
Well,
But it's
Godzilla Final Wars says it
yes,
is. So,
yes, yeah.
if
But
Toho says it is, it's actual.
are we really giving that much credit to Godzilla Final Wars?
Yes.
Okay,
It's one of my favorites.
it was an experience.
It's a lot of fun.
It was something. I
It's
was
up there
confused.
with another film we'll talk about around the corner. That's getting also a 2021 sort of refreshing. That's good to uh, just pop open whatever beverage you like, whether it's chalky milk or a good old Pabst, uh, and just have fun
Or Pabst
with.
milk.
I'm talking, of course, about Mortal Kombat. Um, we're not
Yes.
talking about that here, but that and Godzilla Final Wars are a great double
Dude,
feature to just enjoy yourself with,
I've said it a few times on the podcast already, but I am so freaking pumped
right?
for Mortal Kombat. Like,
Well, stay pumped
so
because
good.
we're talking about it. So,
Yes, we are.
yeah, we're constantly pushing the boundaries on the things we discuss. I mean, obviously, as always, we are established on Star Wars. That's our biggest and greatest love. But
Yes.
we love other things, and you apparently like hearing us talk about those other things.
Apparently.
So we're going to keep doing that. We are planning the rest of this year's content, and our patrons are currently helping us actually with that. So if you want, you can join us for at least $1 a month, and that gets your opinions in the mail to us, lickety split.
Yes, a
And
man on a pony. We'll bring them directly to our door.
right, so yeah, and so the likes of Godzilla versus Kong are what end up on that list
Yes.
when we're allowed to just do as we please, which is fun. It's nice.
Yeah, to be fair, we were left without supervision.
Right.
So,
So, yeah, I mean, like you said, this is a little bit more my nostalgic wheelhouse. Although, obviously, yeah, I mean, we enjoyed it together, but I think differently.
hmm
Um, and I think you definitely like these more modern takes on the characters.
yeah, like I didn't watch Godzilla until I met you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have that same emotional connection to the films like you do. So it in reality, it's just watching a big old monkey fight a big old lizard, and
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty dope. I
It
thought it
is.
was neat.
It was a great movie.
Yeah.
So, as always, we like to kind of build a road to the conversation of the film
Yes.
or character or franchise, whatever we happen to be talking about. And so, before actually discussing the film, which we won't give the Justice League treatment, no 4 hour cuts, but again, If you want our 4-hour
Maybe.
cut of Justice League review, then, get on that Patreon. We need so much money for so many special effects.
Listen, man, it costs so much money. I have anestheticians working round the clock to get rid of this mustache.
Right? You think we do this for free?
Yeah.
So, but nonetheless, I mean, we will be discussing the film, Godzilla vs. Kong, but I don't feel like I can talk about it, or we should talk about it even, given as much as I love these characters and franchise, to disregard that this is not the first time these two have faced off,
Accurate.
and what's kind of led to what we get now as a modern take on Godzilla, because there's quite a lot of years. I mean, we're going on 75 years worth of history,
Yeah.
or closer to 70, I think, behind the big old lizard. So, you can't talk about him without talking about all the baggage that comes with him. Good baggage,
Very good
but
baggage.
still.
Like it's very attractive baggage. It's Vera Bradley.
So, like you said, you haven't really had uh, much exposure to that. I don't know what the algorithm or formula is for getting into or discovering kaiju. Um, I think it's actually harder now than it used to be.
Yeah, I think you have to like have a vehicle of being a weeb at least a little bit.
Well, not for me, because I actually, before really into anime, got into this. Um, although, yeah, I can see how being into Japanese media
Mm-hmm.
is kind of your main in. Now, I will say, with Netflix's Godzilla trilogy, and obviously with these films and more recent references, even, yeah, it's there,
Mm-hmm.
but it's easy to take it as these are these monsters. Like the Godzilla of the Netflix trilogy is Godzilla. Like there's no pull digging you deeper than that because it's its own self-contained universes. So the Netflix one, it doesn't really lean too much. It gives you everything you need to enjoy those movies. The legendary films versions of Godzilla and Kong and all that are self-contained. They don't pull
Mm-hmm.
you into unless you just are one of those people that once you see something you're like, okay, let me go on a Wikipedia and IMDb rabbit hole.
If you have ADHD, yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't pull you in as much. I'm not saying there's no way for people of modern cinema viewing to kind of fall into this, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I know for me it was literally just because I mean, where my mom worked, there was a thrift store attached. Every Salvation Army, that's what most people know them for,
Yeah.
and so they had VHSs, out the wazoo, of course. Most of my film uh, taste comes from what's sat on those shelves forever.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom or me just finally decided, maybe I'll like this. That's how I got into Terminator and all this other stuff. My
Dude.
mom bought me Terminator. I have to clarify, I didn't choose that. She made the
Yeah.
choice.
That that is very on brand for your mom.
Yeah,
To
so like,
just be like, okay, I love this. John's gonna love this.
well, and I don't even know, I don't even really know. We never talked about what her relation with it was. It was just enough of where she was like, I'm sure this will entertain my child.
Yeah.
And so she came home, and I remember the three specifically. It was Godzilla versus Megalon, it was Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, and it was Godzilla versus Mothra. They were all VHSs. I still have all of them, just for nostalgia's sake.
Oh
And
yeah.
so
We're getting them framed.
those were enough. It got me just what I needed, and of course, it was in probably the height of Godzilla's, fame in filmmaking, where they were doing like one a year of these films, and I mean, they were just really cranking it out. And in these in particular, Godzilla is mostly, portrayed as this big, national good guy. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
something proud to show off and everything. And I just, the same reason people like Jurassic Park is why I like these big monsters and everything like that. And of course, it was just a whole new world of, I had no idea about dubbing at that point or special effects or anything. It was literally just big monsters,
Yeah.
bashing it out.
Let's settle this right now. Subs or dubs?
Um, Anime, I can accept a lot of subs. Godzilla, I prefer, or I mean, in anime, I can accept a lot of dubs.
Mm-hmm.
I advocate that some dubs are warranted and earned. Some are well
Dragon Ball.
done. I stand by that others, it's just tradition. And we're getting more and more into a era where we don't require dubs as much. I love many a voice actor, many of people I would love to shake hands with grew up being the voices of anime characters I love
Mhm.
and other characters. But nonetheless, I see it as less and less necessary because I've valued the original content so much that I don't think it needs to be re, redone for me.
Mhm.
And that's how I feel about the Godzilla films, where I'm like, I don't need, it to be Americanized. I don't need it to be English. I don't need all of that. The film is good in and of its own content. I don't need it covered up, if that makes sense. And
Mhm.
not to say that everybody that subs over has ill intentions, or dubs over has ill, like, no, we're
No.
gonna make this like, I'm not saying that, but I think it's worth. I mean, we talk about this a lot with like J horror and K horror and all this other stuff
Yeah.
of like, why do I need like, why do I need it translated to be able to enjoy it? I don't.
Yeah.
So it's like I have less justification for having dubs in my Japanese content and everything. I don't know.
I agree. Like I feel like we've gotten a bit spoiled with dubs, especially us growing up with certain animes and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But like, they're not necessary.
Well, you got to think it's built on it wasn't done of like we want to do this to deliver your wonderful product to American audiences. Like it was not.
Hmm.
It was like, no, if you want us to serialize and spread your great show, we have to have our bit in the coin. And
Hmm.
again, that's not the motivation behind everything, but how it started. I
Yeah.
mean, back in the 60s, and when most of the Godzilla films I watched were released, uh, they were from the 60s. I wasn't from the 60s, although I feel like it sometimes.
You're in your
Um,
60s.
you know, it wasn't going to come to America unless they did. The original Godzilla, perfect example.
Hmm.
It's not going to see American audiences. I think it wasn't until like the early 2000s
Yeah.
until the original cut was released to American audiences.
Yeah. They were like, let's add a white guy for the Americans to look at, and
Yeah,
just
it's ridiculousness. And
it was
so
silly.
although I'm very nostalgic for old films, um I have no problem with dubs. I mean, I
Yeah.
like what they're doing with these films where it's a full on it's a partnered project where they're releasing an American version and they're
Hmm.
doing it well.
Oh yeah.
I see more warrant for what they're doing with these modern films than what they're doing with dubbing over, as they've done in years past and everything.
Yeah. I agree. I thought this was a really good movie.
Yeah, and they say something in here that's really, really interesting and kind of like jarred me when this came out, because he's talking about when Godzilla first appeared 10 years ago, and we're talking about the current 2021 Godzilla versus Kong. It's like, oh my gosh, it is going on 10 years because 2014 is when Legendary released Godzilla.
That is accurate.
Directed by Gareth Edwards, who went on to Rogue One fame, which is, thank you, Gareth.
Thank you,
Um,
Gareth.
he has a way of capturing like these interesting period pieces, and use period piece lightly because it's not necessarily historic or anything, but he, as the modern memes are doing, understood the assignment. Like he took in everything that was Godzilla and translated it,
Hmm.
quote unquote, into a modern and a very honorable American rendition. Same with Rogue One, where he was able to take Star Wars, the original 70s vibe and feel and aesthetic, and he
Hmm.
was able to turn it into a modern Star Wars film. And it
Yeah.
was great.
Unlike, the Matthew Broderick Godzilla, where
I don't have a lot of problem with that.
I, I I'll be clear, that was the first Godzilla movie I ever watched
A
because it
lot of people.
was like we got it from Blockbuster,
Mm-hmm.
which much like your film taste came from the thrift store, mine came from Blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
Just wandering the aisles, and we watched it, and I took in nothing
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know what Godzilla was.
Yeah.
So, like, that was the definitive this is Godzilla in my brain for a long time. Which going back and watching it, it doesn't hold up, but that's just because it was a 90s movie.
Well, yeah, it was very of its time.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's the only real huge complaint against it. I
No,
mean,
it's from the 90s. It's
yeah,
got Hank Azaria in it. It's great. Like,
it's got a great cast. I mean, one of the
yeah,
best human casts to accompany Godzilla, honestly.
yeah.
Um,
Do you think that a human pregnancy test would work on
I mean,
Zilla?
it tests for very similar things, I imagine, regardless of species.
I guess
So,
so.
I mean, I think the body does similar things regardless.
It's
I'm
gotta
not a
be.
scientist, dude. I run a podcast that nobody listens
A
to.
pet doggies.
Um, so we'll talk more. We have a follow up to this where we can talk more about the Godzilla universe and kaiju films overall and
Yes.
everything and dive into that. But coming from a place of a good amount of growing up on Godzilla
Hmm.
to a point of not
Yes.
really,
But enjoying a lot of King Kong
yeah,
content.
knowing of, yeah, you liked, which Kong is a mark of cinematic achievement as
Hmm.
well, back to
Absolutely.
the original 1933 stop motion oriented film. I mean, still, it set the bar
It's
of animation
fantastic.
and special effects for so many for so long,
Oh, yeah. Like, where you've seen, I think, almost every Godzilla film, I've seen almost every King Kong film.
which is easy. No, you haven't, first of all, but which is easy when there's not as
That's why I
many.
said almost.
Yeah, because we're going to talk about some you
Oh,
haven't seen, I
yes.
know.
Accurate. But yeah, I watched the original 1933 version with my dad
Yeah,
in the middle of the night on the Sci-Fi Channel.
it's a great one.
Oh yeah. And then watching the Jeff Bridges one, and then of course my personal favorite,
The Jeff Bridges, that was the
yeah,
1963?
60 something. I don't remember.
Jeff Bridges is that old? Or
Jeff
is there
Brid-
another one I don't know about?
I don't I don't know what year that one came out, but I remember that one.
You talk about it while I look it up, because,
Okay. It's got Jeff Bridges in it. It's a King Kong movie. It's exactly the same formula as you would think. Like, pretty lady gets abducted by Kong, but I remember that was the first time that I saw boobs on a movie. It was jarring, and even more jarring because it was in a King Kong movie. I don't understand why they went that route with it, but like,
it was the thing to take. I mean, you imagine going from it's 1976, by the way.
oh,
Uh,
76.
you
Thank you.
imagine going from the 30s to the 70s. It was a little bit more
Yeah,
open, a little bit more low barrier.
we're gonna put in Jeff Bridges without a shirt.
You're right, because that's what the audiences want.
I mean, I
I'm
wasn't
trying to
planning on.
confirm now because I thought there was a 63, unless what I am thinking about is the original Godzilla versus King Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Actually, it's King Kong versus Godzilla. The original
Mm-hmm.
in 1962 is actually King Kong versus Godzilla, which was because
Yes.
of arrangements they made. Like it was much like these modern films. It was a partnership. It wasn't just Toho. They didn't just get the rights to King Kong and do like it was co-opted between Japanese and American audiences because by the 60s, about 10 years after the original Godzilla came out and several other kaiju films were
Mm-hmm.
very popular already, American audiences were like, we need to get in on this more than just the dubbing and reshooting money. We need to co-op this. We need to help our Japanese brothers out, much like we get the way of Transformers and Power Rangers and all this other stuff. They want more skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So we get films like King Kong versus Godzilla and sequels that we'll talk about. But
Yeah.
interesting, I guess for so long I thought that I guess what I saw as the 76 version,
Yeah.
I thought that was the 63 my brain. Interesting. That
It's fine.
dates got all jumbled, but I know I've only seen the 76 version once, which is probably why I've gotten so confused. And the only reason, and I know this for for a fact, the only reason I saw it was because Peter Cullen, the voice of Optimus Prime, did the voice for King Kong in that film.
Yes, he did.
And I saw that trivia fact on his Wikipedia page, and I was like, I need to see a King Kong then.
Mm-hmm.
So I've only seen that one once. I know I didn't really enjoy it because I went back from that and watched the 33 version along with the original Godzilla 54, and I loved both of those. And
Oh
so
yeah.
like those kind of stuck with me, whereas the 76 version didn't.
That's fair.
And then of course Kong kind of re-entered
Yes.
in, I Oh my gosh, when was it? 2000.
2000 something. But
I think it was 2006.
Peter Jackson made my favorite King Kong movie.
Right?
Like, I love this movie
It's
so
a
much.
very good movie.
We saw it in the theaters, and it was so great.
2005, I was close.
2005.
I knew it was around there because I recently learned
Mhm.
that Peter freaking Jackson, the king of special effects of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings fame, just finished the 3-film trilogy, which, by the way, he filmed back to back, and he filmed reshoots after the release. So they would finish the movie. So we finished Lord of the Rings, right? Okay. Now, 6 months later, like as soon as we're getting the film in theaters, they would be filming for the extended editions. Those were not filmed at the same time. Those were filmed after.
Yep.
So that 6 months later, after people had seen one version, they could capitalize and be like, hey, you like that movie? Have more.
And they did.
Which is not on the same level as Zack Snyder. Don't fight me. But he did that 3 freaking times,
and
right?
then did it again.
And then immediately did it again with no break going into King Kong with the same visual effects team. So the same people that had just done all of that amazing work, which in the early 2000s was intense, he turned around and produced one of the best looking giant monster movies dependent on CG.
Yes, and Jack Black's acting.
Oh my gosh, one of the best Jack Black movies.
Absolutely. One of my favorite Jack Black performances.
Absolutely.
I love Jack Black so much as a human.
He is the highlight of that movie in terms of human characters, other than Adrian Brody's nose.
And barely cracks a joke.
Oh yeah, I mean he just acts well. And then on top of that, you get Andy Serkis in his first typecast role as Monkey Man, because from here he'd go on to be Caesar, of course, and everything. Like, I feel like this man knows apes more than Jane Goodall. Like, that's the one, right?
Yes.
That's the ape lady. Yeah, I get her and Jane Fonda mixed up for some reason. I just imagine this actress in the Everglades just hanging out with orangutans and such.
Jane Fonda is dope, though.
Anyway, my light went out, but it's going to be fine because I'm going to ignore it.
Literally, my light.
Yeah, you're my light and you're still here, so it's
Gross.
fine. Also, like, comment, and survive, and maybe my light will come back to life. Who knows? Donate to Patreon and maybe it'll come back. Peter Jackson's King Kong is great.
Yes, it is.
That's
100%.
what I was trying to wrap up. That's the thought I was trying to wrap up. So that's kind of the journey. So 1954, we get Godzilla. He moves from political and global commentary on injustice and war crimes to a kid-friendly superhero, the likes of Superman, to Japanese audiences everywhere.
Yes.
And then becomes movie monster in the 90s, being reintroduced to American audiences. Then gets reinvigorated as the king character that he's meant to be by Toho once again in the early 2000s, which leads to another cult following that ignites an interest in bringing him to American shores properly this time. That's how we get to Godzilla 2014, which then I believe Kong Skull Island came next.
I think so.
I'm pretty sure that came.
Yes, because it was 2014 Godzilla, and then Skull Island right after.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to set it up as quickly as possible.
Well, wasn't super duper hardcore tied together. I think they were. I mean, it's like the early days of the MCU where they were just, and they'll say, as Kevin Feige will say as much, we were just doing stuff. Like when we put Captain America's shield and Iron Man, we didn't expect what was coming from that. It was just there. And so it's like they were just doing stuff where it's just like, well, I mean, that just came out. We made that movie, so we can use those things.
Yeah.
What if we just set it up? And it worked. And honestly, Kong got the better films out of both. So we essentially got 2 Kong films and 2 Godzilla films, because we got Godzilla 2014, and then we got Godzilla King of the Monsters, and we got Kong Skull Island, which I appreciate them just calling him Kong.
Oh yeah.
And then you get Godzilla vs. Kong, which in my opinion is a King Kong movie.
I agree wholeheartedly, because King Kong was, I think, the focal point of this movie.
Yeah, he was the character.
And just does so much for the character of King Kong.
again, the character,
Yeah.
which and I made this point as much.
Yeah.
I'm bitter because coming from old kaiju films where Godzilla is a character, he's acted, he's exemplified by emotions
Yeah.
and certain like to get just big smashy lizard of these modern films. I will say King of the Monsters did him some favors, but the first one and then this one just make him mean lizard boy, and I'm not a
Yeah.
huge fan of that, especially when you throw in his titular foe and then give it over to Kong. Like it's just one of those things where it's just like I would have preferred some new villain that they both could share.
Hmm.
This feels like I don't know. This just it was a little ham-fisted.
I getcha. And like you absolutely called it in like the first few months when we were getting hyped for the
Oh, it was going to
movie.
be another monster.
You
Yeah.
knew. Like and I think you knew at that point that it was gonna be Mechagodzilla too.
Not until the trailer. The trailer confirmed it, but like the only reason I knew was because of what they'd done with Skull Island to make Kong such a good guy.
Yeah.
And then with King of the Monsters, as soon as that came out and they were kind of like, okay, no, Godzilla's good. He's going to defend Earth. Maybe not humans, but he's going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
I'm like they're making them both good boys, which I'm perfectly okay with and is the way these characters should be. But you don't do that and then immediately like make it out like, oh, and now they want to kill each other. Like,
Yeah, no.
why?
You don't set two characters up like that.
Even though they were trying to tease, like they barely teased Mechagodzilla. So even if you missed it in the trailer, you could see the trailer and the points where it's just like some ancient war, like all this. Like they were trying to build lore that made it seem like they should fight each other,
Hmm.
but it's one of those things like just because cave paintings and white people say it doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Like it like, oh, that painting says you're supposed to fight the lizard, so go do it. Like, why?
I
What
love
did he do to me?
I love the idea that it's just like in King Kong's blood. Like the second he sees Godzilla, he's like, I'm gonna fight that lizard.
No, I mean they do establish there's a lore of like these under earth titans, which is what the
Yeah.
new universe calls them.
Which is cool.
I enjoy it. I enjoy they spent time to
Yeah.
establish where the heck do these big things keep coming from. And they build in there that they can recognize each other, which isn't so much a blood feud thing to me. It's much more, as they use it in the film, a animalistic sense of just like I'm animal, you're animal. We come from the same place.
We don't fight.
I know that because that's the focal point of this plot. Is
Mhm.
while the villain is trying to build Mechagodzilla to make and I love the spin and how they turned it. Most people
Yes.
probably thought it was cheesy and everything, but I like that Alpha Cybernetics, I believe.
Apex.
That's right.
Apex.
Same connection because it's the idea. I like that they take a cool name
Hmm.
that could exist and then make it about like no, our mission is to become the apex predators to prove these monsters are not god or king. And so
Yes.
I love that spin that they did just in a turn of dialogue towards the end.
Yeah. That
So
was good.
so that's the history of Mechagodzilla.
Mhm.
Works a lot better than Aliens. I appreciate it.
I'm a little disappointed that we did not get a monkey man.
I think it's too early. A lot of fans want the Monsterverse to go towards Aliens next. I think it should, but this
Yeah.
was too early to go Alien.
I forgot. I have seen Mechagodzilla, the first one.
Yeah,
Yes.
but so and on that note though, we all know the best Mechagodzilla
Oh,
was
yes.
man-made.
Yes.
So in both senses, both the first birth and the rebirth, and I will fight anybody that says differently. I'll come to that.
Yeah.
So the focal point is they're making Mechagodzilla to be the apex again, to put Godzilla and King Kong and all these titans in their place.
Yes. Using bones of Ghidorah.
Yeah, so I love that they build in already real and established plot. Okay, so it's
Yes.
always been a thing
That is
of
appreciated.
where they don't explain it in any film. So if you go back and watch Godzilla versus Ghidorah or the three-headed monster, or if you watch Godzilla kill all monster, it was Ghidorah
Have I been saying it
originally.
wrong?
No. It's gone through different kind of iterations.
Hmm.
Originally, it was Ghidorah when he
Okay.
first kind of appears, and then they get Ghidorah, and then King Ghidorah, and
Wasn't it
all
at
that
one
such.
point the monster from Planet X?
Well, that came out of titling differences. So Godzilla versus the monster from Planet X was also Godzilla versus or Godzilla versus Gigan, I believe. Like there's a lot of, and that all comes from the Americanization and the over the seas marketing, and like there's all this stuff
Yeah.
behind these films that make for barriers to understanding or enjoying them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Gigan is the armadillo, right?
Nope.
No. Gigan is the
Hook Hand Man Car Door.
Hook Hand Man Door Car Door.
If
Yes.
you don't get that reference, just Google Gigan. So anyway, it's always been established that, okay, with these long necks and multiple heads, how in the heck does 3 tiny brains, because his head in proportion to his body is very small. Fun fact, Godzilla also has 2 brains. So how does that work? How do 3 tiny brains control big golden dragon monster? Telepathy. So they might not be huge, but they're very developed. And so they have that kind of built in. So they recognize that more than likely just from studying and dissecting the remains that they gathered from Ghidorah from King of the Monsters, and realize, hey, if we can tap into this like a Bluetooth receiver, we could maybe use this to control something. And that kind of is the built-in logic behind how do they control giant mecha monster, but also how does giant mecha monster go bad. Now, I like this. I do like this. I was a little disappointed. It's one of those things I can, to a point, understand how people would be like, man, missed opportunities. Because when I've seen, I mean, I don't know how many freaking films there are. Like, there's like 30-something Godzilla films. When I've seen all these movies and I've seen all variations of plot, where they've invented and reinvented characters and changed things up, it's hard not to, in a new iteration again, to be like, yeah, but that other version did it better. I like what they did because it's actually a combination. So my favorite Mechagodzilla iteration is Kiryu, never called actually Mechagodzilla. Kiryu, what?
It sounds like Kill You.
That's the point.
It's very funny.
Kiryu is the Millennium series, which is the Godzilla films that came out post 1999 to 2005. It's that era's Mechagodzilla. And what's really freaking poetic and amazing about this is they wanted to go more realistic with these movies. So, which they started off with an alien invasion. Don't ask me.
Of course.
But they wanted to stay away from aliens for like the classic characters. So, originally Mechagodzilla was made by aliens. Why? I mean, not too far off from what the plot of Godzilla vs. Kong was, just because they could and they wanted to dominate. I don't know.
They were just having fun, doing
right?
stuff.
So, whereas Aliens brought us the original, which has its built-in logic of why can it, A, build a giant robot that works, B, build a giant robot that can withstand atomic breath and all this other stuff. Aliens, just throw it away with Aliens. History Channel's been doing it for years. So then...
Hey.
But now fast forward about 30-something years, and they need a better plot. And so they come up with, what if the Godzilla we're fighting isn't the original or only Godzilla? What if in this timeline, the 1954 film, I combined 4 and film in there, happened. That Godzilla happened and died. Killed by the great Dr. Serizawa, by the way, whose heir, son...
I guess grandson, maybe?
I don't know. In this film, there's a Dr. Serizawa who controls...
Who is one of the only Japanese characters in this film.
Underused, man. I really...
So underused. And he has, like, this K-pop haircut.
And if you're gonna throw out Serizawa,
yeah,
you better use that character.
Yeah, more than just sitting in a skull and, like, getting all wide-eyed.
Yeah, I mean, he looked cool for what he was there for, but, like, he did not play an integral part, and I'm sad. I mean, that's the equivalent... I'm trying to think... That's like bringing in Mara Jade, but then having her as a background character for, I don't know, whatever.
And not even name-dropping her. She's just sitting at the bar in the background.
Yeah, that's Miss Jade. Like, they do something like that where it's just like, I'm supposed to know who that is, but I don't care. So, anyway. So, the original Godzilla, dead.
Yes.
the Godzilla they're fighting now in the 2000s films is a second one. And so if that Godzilla existed and died, its skeleton's at the bottom of the ocean. So they retrieve the skeleton,
Ah.
build armor and robotics around it, and thus have Mechagodzilla. And the plot centers around the fact that once they kind of plug up Godzilla to the skeleton to the cybernetics, he kind of comes back to life. And so Mechagodzilla actually goes bad because the original Godzilla, which at that point was evil, was still in there. And that's exactly what happens here with Ghidorah of once they combine. So I kind of got off track where the plot centers around going to the Hollow Earth to retrieve
Yes.
whatever energy helps create these giant titans.
With Alexander Skarsgård.
It's not super clear why they need that,
Mhm.
but essentially it's because they can't they can't jumpstart Mechagodzilla. They can turn it on, but eventually it's just not enough power from man-made tech.
Yeah.
So they need the source that gives life to all titans. That's where that whole side plot of adventure towards the center of the earth comes from. I did not understand that the first time.
No.
I don't know if there's missing parts that could have helped me or
I
if I'm
mean,
dumb.
it's entirely possible that there were deleted scenes that kind of explain that a little bit more. But
If it's there, I'm dumb and I'll
Yeah.
accept that. But it's just one of the
Yeah.
so that's the driving point of this plot. They need the good Hollow Earth juice to bring Mechagodzilla to life.
yes.
Problem is, once it does that, it brings Ghidorah to life because Mechagodzilla is Ghidorah. So what I don't know is, were they trying to say that Ghidorah was in control or just Mad Titan energy was in control?
I think they were going for Mad Titan energy was in control, but I
Yeah.
think it would make more sense if it was Ghidorah.
Right.
Like, we're not gonna rewrite your movie there, friend, but like,
I mean, either way is
I know.
fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives a reason for Mechagodzilla to be bad. Like,
Yeah.
what other than just humans make big giant tank monster, we need to destroy that. But no, this is out of our control kind
Yeah.
of situation.
Speaking of Journey to Hollow Earth,
hmm
at the ride at Universal that we're
Yeah,
developing,
you were on that when we were watching
yeah,
this.
that's gonna be a ride
As should
immediately.
be. It looks so much fun.
Do you think it's gonna be like a Star Tours type ride where you're just sitting in a pod and stuff happens around you, or do you think it's gonna be a roller coaster?
No, I think, well, if anything, combine it because that's what Rise of Resistance did.
And they did it well.
Do moments where obviously most of the flying is that, but then where you exit, you kind of go out and they can do, the part where they're coming out of the earth
Mhm.
when Godzilla and Kong are fighting and they just
Yes.
zoom around them.
That
First
was
of-
so good.
The cinematography done for this film
Stunning.
is amazing. Adam Wingard, director. I know that there's several people that are involved in everything that happens in films, but obviously the director has a lot of push and a lot of, direction.
Mhm.
And so, credit where credit is due. This film is amazing.
They did such a good job of making it look like it was two people in suits fighting,
Right.
but better.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is they use very classic film tech or film shot technique for giant monster movies, even though they don't have to. But then also they take things
Yeah.
pioneered by Pacific Rim and make it like you're a drone in the fight. Like it
Yeah.
makes you feel like you're in the midst of this battle.
It looks almost handheld. Like it
It's
looks
Well,
fantastic.
it might be because thanks to James Cameron, a good old Jim.
James Cameron, the
Right.
greatest pioneer.
I need at least another $5 million. I need more blue.
More blue tail.
The tech that he created for Avatar, filming on an entirely computer-generated set.
Mhm.
Basically, they build it, and Mandalorian even benefited from this. They build it digitally and then combine that with a special type of camera that when you're viewing, your actor in tights, if you look on the screen to the left of you, you see the completed scene. You see it overlapping. More
Mhm.
than likely, that's how they did a lot of this.
Yeah.
If they didn't, here's the thing, that tech is really a crutch. It's a help to help you because it is very hard to animate with no reference,
Yes.
especially to this level of detail. So
Stunning.
if they used that, good on them because a lot of films do that and that's awesome. If they didn't, holy cow, these people deserve all the hugs and money because, geez, they are talented.
so talented.
In
like-
general, this film looks amazing.
Yeah, even though we point out like little plot things that could have been better explained, this movie is gorgeous.
There's not a Godzilla film that exists that doesn't have a point where you're just like, that's kind of silly. But we're not here for that. We're here for either one monster smashing everything or two monsters duking it out.
No, we had so much fun watching this movie.
Yeah, and that's what I love about it, and that's what I like about where it's come from. The 2014 was very static. It was very monster movie.
Mhm.
The thing that's appealing and the thing that I love most about Godzilla movies aren't that they are monster movies, but that they're fun, entertaining,
Yeah.
giant monster movies. There's a difference between monsters that should scare you, or that represent horror or tragedy, and there's giant monsters that are meant to kind of just resemble fun,
Yeah.
goofiness and very B sci-fi. Like no matter the best Godzilla movie is still a B movie because it's a guy in a rubber suit. Like it's just, I mean, it's up there with just using what you can to create what you can't. Like
Yes.
before CG, before all this other stuff, how do we make people believe in giant monsters? Lots of rubber,
Make everything real small.
Hundreds of pounds
Make
of
this
rubber.
guy a big monster.
right?
And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the fantastic human characters in this movie.
A very good cast.
Very good cast. I think Millie
You-
Bobby
you-
Brown did great.
You hated who you were supposed to hate, and you loved who you were supposed to love.
Yes. I loved the character. Oh, his name escapes me.
Oh, the podcast guy? Oh,
Like
my gosh.
he was fantastic.
I've never
the
been
entire
so
time.
seen in film.
Right?
I loved it. The humor was great.
The
Like
humor was
there,
fantastic.
there wasn't anything I felt that was extremely lacking. I think overall, though, it was just a matter of there was a lot of good plot to make this entertaining movie happen,
Mhm.
and ultimately the plot got a little condensed to make it happen. And I'm okay with that because that meant we got 5 more minutes of Godzilla pounding on King Kong.
Yes.
And I mean, the fighting was epic. I mean, I love the classic stuff. I will
yeah.
always be nostalgic. I've never seen such a good monster brawl.
Oh yeah, the scene on the boat was incredible.
Oh my gosh, it was like everything about this, it was just enough to, tickle the kid in me that loved these kinds of movies growing up, and everything to entertain the grown-up in me that likes a film to be good and entertaining.
Yeah.
It's a great middle ground,
And you know what? It kept my interest the whole way through.
right? So I don't think we can gush much more about it. I mean, we could,
No.
but so as I mentioned, though, this is not the first time these
No.
big titans have faced off.
It's not.
And I love that. The mythical, the legendary King Kong versus Godzilla. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is a 1962 film that was made in partnership with Toho and American companies to release a film
Yes.
that partnered the two biggest monsters of the two biggest nations at the time, I guess.
At the time.
Yeah, that they've always been made out to be, America and Japan. They've always been made out to be such titans of the world and everything. I don't know. People are people. I don't know. There's no one country better than the other.
No.
Although generally, never mind. I'm not going to get into it.
Please don't.
Anyway, so Godzilla was very popular by this point,
Yeah.
as were giant monster movies. And America had its successes with King Kong and the likes, but definitely to a more horror element. And so when ideas began circulating of how can we combine these and capitalize on these on both shores, ultimately King Kong versus Godzilla was what was settled on.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of craziness around this, but essentially it ends up being a film that it lives up to its name, where King Kong's there, Godzilla's there, they must fight.
They fight.
The plot was not very forward in old kaiju films because
No.
you were there for the kaiju.
Exactly.
And ultimately, it was a bit of an achievement to get this level of cooperation in film. Not necessarily a perfect version, I think, and that's just a product of the times. But overall, just to see, studios come together and work for an entertaining film for audiences is pretty cool. This was the only successful one that they did, though, and I do recommend finding it and watching it. Old Godzilla movies
Yeah.
are hilarious. Showa and Heisei series, which are like the 60s and 80s series, are lovely films.
If you want to see a smooth Godzilla son.
Yeah, they're fantastic. So Um, this was done well, but as everything that's done well, um, there's always things that are followed up because more money,
Yeah,
but not necessarily more quality.
absolutely not.
So at one point, ideas circulated of, okay, how can we do this again? What's the next big American movie monster that we can take? First of all, obviously King Kong originally was only about like 60 feet tall. It
Yeah,
wasn't super huge, so he was scaled up tremendously.
big
Because
time.
typically Godzilla is about 500 meters tall, which is about 130 something feet or some math number, I don't know. Yeah.
Metric numbers.
So King Kong was much bigger. So size wasn't an issue. So if size isn't an issue, and we're talking about classic monsters, obviously the first thought is
Frankenstein's
Frankenstein.
monster.
Ah! um,
But here's the thing: is that Frankenstein's monster isn't a monster.
no.
He is a creation.
Well, yeah.
He is a misunderstood creation who was not loved by his daddy and who went off and just did his best.
A lot of
right?
murder happens when you're not loved by your daddy.
I
Let's
have a
be
lot
fair.
of emotions about
Yeah.
Frankenstein's monster.
Oh, it's well, I mean, right up there with Godzilla in terms of being more of a social
Classic.
justice and world commentary.
The original film was directed by a gay man.
And it was about the idea of being ostracized for who you are, not for who you.
Yes.
Well, for who you appear to be, not for who you are.
Exactly. And it was so
Um,
edited down by the film company that they made Frankenstein's monster into a monster.
Well, it went from being a tragic character to being a scary character,
Exactly.
and you can see how that's prevailed media. Now, again, Godzilla was not made to entertain children; he was made to comment on war
Yes.
and the atrocities of it and everything. And yet, he went on to entertain children. Does that mean that it's one or the other, bad, good? I think you need both. I think be entertained by your films, but also recognize the stories behind them and empathize with them in such a way that, hey, while this is fun and entertaining and fictional,
Mhm.
factually, people are hurt and ostracized. Like all
Yes.
this stuff, like there's real life that happens around these entertaining movies.
Oh, absolutely. Like, if you want a good breakdown of a movie like that, watch Dead Meat's breakdown of his house.
Yeah,
That they did a fantastic job breaking down that movie.
very much so.
Yeah.
So, um, Frankenstein's monster as an entertainment property.
Mhm.
Baffling idea. It was so baffling that they said no, and went on to make Godzilla vs. Mothra.
Yeah.
So thank you. Which began. Mothra was the first OG character. Mothra, Rodan. Oh my gosh. Varan, Baragon. All of these other monsters had their own stuff
Yeah.
that were eventually absorbed into Godzilla because he just was more popular. So Godzilla actually revolutionized characters that would have died off and never become as iconic as they are, continued to exist because Godzilla was popular. So that's pretty cool. So, but anyway, while that wonderful movie is being made, a bad one over here is being made where they're like, okay, well, let's drop Frankenstein for now and let's go back to King Kong because we can do that.
Yes.
Did you know there was a Mecha King Kong?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Because you told me about it,
Yeah.
and I was disappointed.
Because when you run out of ideas, what better to do than to just make a robo version of your main character? Sometimes
Hey.
it works, Mecha Godzilla. Sometimes it doesn't, Mecha Kong. And so
Made by Victor Frankenstein, may we point
no,
out?
no, I'll get there. So
Oh.
for now, they basically just go with that plot of like Robo Kong versus Kong. It just becomes a duke 'em out, battle. They use the same Kong suit and everything.
Of course.
It's just basically, hey, we promised a movie. Here's a movie. It was fine, but I mean, just like Godzilla versus or King Kong versus Godzilla, it was fine. But old kaiju movies is just But after that, they were stuck on this Frankenstein's monster thing, so they decided to do. Oh my gosh, where is it? I need to find the appropriate name for this film, where it centers
It's
around Frankenstein's monster is a kaiju.
Yeah.
Um,
Which I've said many times.
right.
At least someone's proving me right.
No, well, what made him a kaiju was both being translated to Japanese audiences, but also being made gigantic.
Yeah.
I am finding it. It's somewhere. Am I on the right movie? I'm not on the right movie. There's so many Godzilla vs. Kong movies now, I can't even find the right one.
Dude, there's so many versus movies in general.
So, Frankenstein Conquers the World. So essentially, yeah, Victor Frankenstein made a giant kaiju Frankenstein monster, and he fought Baragon,
Mhm.
which is a good boy kaiju, um, and I love him very much. He just looks like a big old puppy, but he's a lizard. It's
I
interesting.
appreciate that.
Um,
I like a good puppy lizard.
Nothing huge about this movie other than it got a sequel
Yeah,
somehow, where parts of Frankenstein fell off in the fight with Baragon, and then grew because of mold into giant kaiju in War of the Gargantuans, where you have a green and an orange gargantuan, which basically looks like they took the Frankenstein suit and then covered it in fur, and they fight. Yeah, it's interesting. Um, there's a wonderful little world out there of kaiju films that I highly recommend people look into because, my goodness, again, if anything else, it's entertaining.
Yeah, and I'm
Um,
sure there's MST3K video
uh, I
movies about
believe there
it.
actually is of the King Kong versus Godzilla one. Actually,
Oh,
I'm pretty sure there. I'm pretty sure there's one of that one, and I maybe even Giant Monsters All Out Attack, which was the original version of Godzilla Final Wars back in the late '70s. That was meant to be like, hey, all-star cast of all your favorite kaiju because this is the last movie we're ever making
yeah, sure.
for a few years.
Of course.
To their credit, they did wait a while. So there's so much history. I love Kong. There's not as much behind him, but there's plenty you should watch.
Big monkey. What else do you need?
If anything, there's more quality behind Kong than there is Godzilla. But the thing is, Godzilla's enjoyment isn't all from quality. It's just
No.
entertaining. So, highly recommend you find like Prime, HBO Max, and even Hulu have some of these films that you should definitely check out. And like I mentioned before, Netflix has a very modern anime adaptation and interpretation of Godzilla. If you're not
Yeah.
into anime, I don't recommend it because it's very anime. But if you like anime, you can check it out. Otherwise, yeah, the movies are out there, man.
Yeah.
I recommend you check them out. Um, just pick one and go in and
Just commit.
report your findings because
Exactly.
it'll be fun. You might find one you enjoy. You
Yeah.
never know. But this was and is a very fun movie.
Oh yeah.
I do hope that it gets a sequel, not a Godzilla vs. Kong sequel, but
More
an
in the
addition.
universe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more in the MonsterVerse. Right now, it's very ambiguous what they're gonna do. If this is all we get is a quadrilogy of great monster movies, I
Yes.
think that's a great achievement. But if it can continue, I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Let us know if you've seen this movie, what your thoughts are.
Yes.
Do you have something else to add?
I do have something else to add because with the movie being Godzilla versus Kong, it made me start thinking what other kaiju could team up.
Oh, that's
or,
right.
Or just
And
I
here, I
have
almost closed out before giving you your bit.
it's not a bit. It's an actual idea. All right?
Uh-huh.
So respect the bit. I mean the idea. So I have my notes here, my Let's Go Bananas notebook, and I wrote down some ideas.
If you haven't been keeping up, I'm very sensitive to what is and is not a kaiju, and she exploits it all the time.
I zero in on it, and it is the funniest thing. It's almost as funny as when I show you videos of things that are not cake being cut into and revealed to be cake.
It's a waste of
It's
good
so
cake.
funny, though. Your reactions are delightful. So, bear with me. I did get
I
a
have
suggestion from Adam, from a certain point of view,
Thanks.
which, what other kaiju can fight each other? We have the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man versus Calamity Ganon. I think that would be a good one, personally.
Neither of those are a kaiju.
We have Bob's Big Boy versus King-Sized Homer from the episode of The Simpsons.
Also not kaiju.
We have 18-foot tall Halloween skeleton from Home Depot. Versus
18 feet?
18 feet.
What?
That thing was 18 feet tall.
That's like a kaiju's toe.
But versus Super Shredder from Secret of the Ooze.
That's just a dude on steroids.
We have Bowser versus the Jolly Green Giant.
The Giga Bowser from this new Mario game,
Yes.
I would accept
I was personally thinking Bowser from the end of Mario Odyssey, but that will work too. And then, you're the wild card. We're going to throw in Rhett from Rhett and Link. Rhett McLaughlin, 6'9". No, 6'7". Something like that.
No.
If you have any other
None
kaiju,
of these are kaiju.
if you have any other kaiju that you would like to throw in,
Please don't.
bring us up.
Just don't, actually.
Get us on the horn.
And dadgummit, James Gunn. I have you to thank for upsetting the rhythm of what is and isn't a kaiju, because freaking Suicide Squad is coming out and Starro's there, and he's not a kaiju. I don't care what that silly weeb in the tech office says. I don't even know that character's name, but he's probably going to be funny. I'm still going to watch the movie, but it's not a kaiju.
I've said it before. I'm excited for King Shark. 100%.
Who is not a kaiju?
He's big.
Ask yourself.
Big monster.
Most of the things you think are kaiju are not kaiju. Just stop.
Ooh.
Just stop.
I remembered which one. So, Rhett McLaughlin from Rhett Link versus one horse-sized duck.
No. None. No. These are no. Ugh. No. None of these are kaiju. This has been an episode.
I had fun.
I was enjoying myself. Now I don't know what I'm doing or feeling, but
Take a sip of coffee.
I'm definitely dark because my light died, and so R.I.P. to my light.
The one on the inside or the one on the outside?
Both. One is dying more and more as I continue. Please support us. Go give us money on Patreon and
Support us.
like and rate. Not for the madness, but to give me a new light. If I can't have light back in my soul, I at least need light in the video. I can't even.
Thank you to the Red5Network. We are a part of the Red5 family of podcasts.
Who contribute to this ridiculousness.
Yes. And then
You're repping Scarif podcast
I am
swag.
indeed.
Thanks, Ro.
Always gluten-free. Thank you. And then thank you to Jesse at Game Infinite. You're a
Yes.
part of the Game Infinite family as well.
Yes, we are.
We run the Star Wars Infinite on Instagram and on
Yep.
Twitter.
If you want Star Wars in your life, support us on Instagram.
Send John a gift.
I'm not going to be happy until
Of
we
coffee.
get like $500 a month on Patreon. $6,000 a month, and I don't know. We'll make a kaiju.
We will make a kite. Is that how we're gonna have kids?
I need to put these on our actual stretch goals.
Yes. We're gonna fund a kaiju.
Oh gosh! All right.
$1,000 a month. We will fund a Robot Wars robot.
We've met our overlord's requirements. We've talked about good kaiju, and then we've ruined everything. So that's an episode. I think that's an episode. That's complete.
I think that's an
That's
episode.
everything we set out and promised to do every week. Boba's snoring like a kaiju. I just can't win. I can't win this episode.
I think you're having...
I am Mechagodzilla. In this, I am borked by everything around me. I just want to exist.
Good night, everybody. Have a good one.
Wait a minute. You know, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.